Coming up on this episode, another all-time classic battle between Stephen Curry and LeBron James. But the Warriors lose again in agonising fashion, going down 145-144 to the Lakers in a double overtime thriller. Yes, welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. I'm a little bit under the weather still, so I apologise. It's just gone 6:30 a.m. here for me, Monday morning in Australia. What a day of sport we had yesterday. Just unbelievable. Of course, the Warriors-Lakers game we'll get into. But if you're an Australian, if you're a cricket fan at all, we had the end of two extraordinary test matches with England conceding a huge first innings deficit only to come back and win in India. A huge result there. And then, of course, the West Indies somehow beating us on our own turf. I don't know how that happened. Huge credit to them. Australia, we kind of took the piss a little bit, and if you're a little bit casual when you're playing sports sometimes at the professional level, you can be found out, and I think Australia were. For anyone that doesn't know what I'm talking about, the only way I could describe it in kind of NBA terms is if Detroit went to Boston and played a 5-game series, all in Boston, and somehow won 3-2 in like a legitimate playoff series or something like that. That is kind of how I would describe how big an upset that was for the West Indies to beat Australia in Australia. Quite unbelievable. I think they were 15-1 before the Test match started. And then, of course, I stayed up late last night to watch Yannick Sinner come from 2 sets to love down to beat Daniil Medvedev. Quite an extraordinary performance there. I've got a mate of mine who's really happy because he told me 3 or 4 years ago, before Sinner was really a household name, that this guy was going to be a star and that he was going to be a Grand Slam champion. And he's been proven right. So congratulations to him. Congratulations to Yannick Sinner. Feel for Daniil, who he can be a bit of a polarizing figure, I suppose. Maybe half of that is because he's Russian. I actually really like him. I love the way he carries himself, so I'm disappointed for him. But another classic Australian Open final, which was absolutely fantastic. But let's get into Warriors-Lakers yesterday because, game of the season, maybe. At least from a neutral standpoint, if you're a non-Warrior, non-Laker fan watching that, even as a Laker fan, you'd probably say it was the best game of the season. Warriors fans, if you put aside the fact we lost, you could say it was the game of the season. LeBron James, Steph Curry, for those two guys to be doing what they're doing at this point of their career, 82 combined points. Steph has 9 threes, 46 points. LeBron goes for 36, a season high, 20 rebounds, 12 assists, triple-double. Just unbelievable. It's unfortunate that the game was marred by some controversial refereeing decisions, and I don't really want to speak about that too much because I don't want it to sound like I'm making excuses for the Warriors losing or anything like that. I've already had a couple of mates kind of complaining that I've been sooking about it, which I actually don't think I have, because I think the refereeing was generally, in that fourth quarter and overtime, I thought the refereeing was pretty poor for both teams. And I think both teams could feel like they were, the refs were making some controversial decisions both ways. And I think the biggest one for me was the inadvertent whistle with 20 seconds to go in the fourth or whatever, which, that just shouldn't be happening at any point. And Lakers fans will point to the fact that, Clay airballed the 3. Warriors fans might say, well, he airballed the 3 because he was put off by the whistle. That doesn't matter. Just the fact there was an inadvertent whistle at that point, and then you've got to have a jump ball at midcourt. That doesn't make any sense. And there should be no reason for that happening. The free throw differential, obviously, Lakers go 38 of 43. The Warriors go 11 of 16. Should there be a 27 free throw differential? Absolutely not. I wouldn't have thought. Should Steph Curry only be getting 3 free throws for the game? Absolutely not. I wouldn't have thought. But yes, you've got to admit the different styles that these two teams play, and the Warriors got, I think, way too jump shot heavy down the stretch. So the styles that they play, the Lakers are always going to take more free throws. That's just bound to happen. But should they be taking 27 more? Probably not. The one that was really confusing to me that I had to move to clarify, and this is, I saw John Hollinger tweet about it and some other pretty prominent names, which goes to show you the little known rule, I suppose. which had to do with the first overtime and about 3.5 minutes left, where Draymond blocks AD's three-point attempt in the corner. Ball goes out. There's 5 seconds left on the shot clock. LeBron has a cut to his arm, and there's an infection control timeout. They come back, and all of a sudden there's 14 seconds on the shot clock. And LeBron gets the inbounds and then scores with about 4 seconds left on the clock. So without the shot clock resetting, he wouldn't have had the time to be able to make the move he did, I suppose. So that was a big thing on Twitter in the aftermath, even before the game ended, because everyone's wondering and I initially was just like, why did the shot clock reset? For what reason? There's absolutely no reason. And there's, a lot of prominent people who tweeting the same thing. And you've got to go deep into the rule book to realize that, unfortunately, for the Warriors, the law does state that during an infection control timeout, that the shot clock does reset in that scenario from 5 to 14. So there actually wasn't a mistake on that one. And I think we should probably get off the refs or get off the NBA's back on that one. I think it's a stupid rule. There's no way that the defensive team should be penalized in that scenario. So you can say it's a stupid rule, but was it a mistake in the moment? No, that's the rule. And it was weird because Mike Breen and Doris Burke on the call kind of glossed over it. And I was wondering, why are they glossing over this? Why did they just mention it's reset to 14 without telling us why? But obviously they probably knew why that was the case. But I think the amount of discussion it got on Twitter showed that not many people actually know that rule. And fair enough, too, because I don't think it's really ever been that evident that it was yesterday when people are questioning why it went from 5 back to 14. But anyway, the refereeing both ways. I mean, the Lakers were probably rightly complaining for the Draymond foul on Anthony Davis late in regulation there that, could have been at least reviewed for a flagrant one foul, and then didn't happen. The Vanderbilt one at the end where obviously the Lakers wanted a moving screen on that Steph 3 that put the Warriors up with 4.7 seconds remaining. Dare I say the LeBron move at the end, was that a travel? Close to. Draymond thought it was a travel. He gets fouled, goes to the free throw line, knocks down 2 clutch free throws and wins the game. So, there was just some controversial refereeing decisions throughout, especially late in the fourth and in overtime. But I kind of want to go away from that. And I want to move to see where the Warriors actually lost this game. And there's so many things, right? There's so many things where the game is determined. But just some things that shot out to me, because the Warriors, it sucks to say, they played well. They played pretty well. And this is the issue now, is it's back-to-back games where they've played well. You can take some optimism from it. You certainly take some positives from it, and yet they don't have wins to show for it. Back-to-back 1-point losses. It's hard to see where they actually find the motivation to come back and try and salvage something out of this season, because right now, it's so demoralizing to have back-to-back 1-point defeats in the manner that they've had, where they find themselves up 15 points in the third quarter. That start to the third where they went on 25-5 run, that was vintage Warrior basketball. That was knocking down threes. That was getting out in transition, which is something they haven't done all season. That was fantastic basketball. Fantastic. And yet, the Lakers immediately respond with a 14-0 run of their own. Golden State is still up 9. Steph makes a 3 with 3:58 to go, puts them up 9. You think they're in control, they're going to win the game. Lakers go on, a 12-0 run, I think it was. And then Steph makes a couple of layups to force overtime. Lakers kind of in control of the first overtime. Clay hits a 3 to force second overtime. And then we get the end where Steph hits the 3 to put him in front, and then LeBron the free throws. But whatever. As I said, we'll go into some of the mistakes here. And I actually want to start with Steph. So everyone will look at the box score and say 46 points, 9 threes, what a great game. He wouldn't have actually had to have done all he did in overtime and in double overtime, even the 2 layups at the end of regulation. He wouldn't have had to do that if he had a better fourth quarter. And some of the stuff from him in the fourth quarter, you could argue cost the Warriors the game. Now, I know how weird that sounds when you're talking about a guy who had 46 points, but he missed a couple of wide open threes in that fourth quarter. He had 2 turnovers near half court where he just inexplicably lost the ball. I think one turned into a transition layup or dunk, and then the other, D'Angelo Russell, weirdly double dribbled. And then he had a third turnover off an offensive foul as well. And so the Warriors, they just struggled for offense late in the fourth quarter. And so Steph had, I think, 7 points when in the fourth quarter after he came back in at the 7-minute mark or whatever. So that's not bad. But he missed a lot of shots. He had that 3-pointer that was blocked by AD as well. I just didn't think it was a good fourth quarter from him. I thought he played well in the overtimes, absolutely. He was clutch down the stretch with the 2 layups, albeit the first one was the Lakers just giving him that layup. The second one was beautiful. Nasty crossover on AD to force overtime. But otherwise, I think that Steph could have done a lot more late in that fourth quarter to ensure you're up 9 with 3:58 to go. You just got to win that game. And unfortunately, the Warrior offense froze, and the Warrior offense runs through Steph Curry. And I'm not saying that he's solely responsible for the offense freezing down the stretch. I think there's other things that Steve Kerr could have done, that other players could have done. As I said before, the Warriors got way too jump shot heavy, I think, late in the game. But it was far from a perfect fourth quarter from Steph, to the point where I'd say his fourth quarter was actually poor. And that's masked a little bit by what he did in overtime and the last 2 layups that he made in regulation. So I actually think he could probably take some blame. I know when I was watching it at the time and the Warriors were about to lose the game in regulation, I was going to almost put 100% of the blame on Steph for how he'd performed in that fourth quarter. And so, as good as he was, 46 points, 9 threes, I don't think that he should actually be aside from the blame in this. I thought he made some mistakes. Again, a couple of the wide open missed threes he had when the Warriors desperately needed them. It was just unfortunate. And then he wouldn't have had to have done what he did in the overtime periods where he was really good. There's no doubt about that. But the fourth, not so much. Let's go just quickly to his splash brother Klay Thompson earlier in the game. So 1 of 8 in the first half, and some of the shot selection was really average. Finishes the game with 24 points, 6 of 17 shooting from deep, 9 of 24 overall. So still not overly efficient, but got going after that 2-point first half. Part of the blame here has to go to Steve more so than Klay in this, because I have no idea what that lineup was late first, early second quarter that Steve was going to. And you could look back at that and say that's where they lost the game. Like, if they just play a better lineup at that point, they have better production in that period, and then that ultimately probably helps them win the game down the stretch. He was going with Joseph, Pods, Klay, Saric, Looney. And I tweeted out, I was like, I'm not sure what that lineup is trying to do other than lose, basically, because I don't think there's enough offense. Like, Klay's really your only go-to guy. And then Dario's a good offensive player, but I don't think he should be the second option in any lineup. I just don't think he should be the second option. He's a catch-and-shoot player. And then when the defense closes out, he can put the ball on the floor a little bit and make plays. Like, that's fine, but I don't think he should ever be the second best offensive option. Pods is okay, and he actually had a reasonable game yesterday. I'll get into him in a second. And then Joseph and Looney, and like, defensively, I still don't like that is a pretty small lineup as well. When you got Kojo and Pods out there in the backcourt together. So I don't know what that lineup was trying to achieve. And I think moving forward, maybe the biggest takeaway from this game was the fact that one of Steph or Draymond have to be out on the floor at all times. They just simply have to be. So there was some pressure on Klay in that lineup offensively that probably hurt his efficiency did hurt his efficiency in the first half and even overall for the game. So some of the blame on him, but mainly on Steve for that weird, just horrific lineup at the end of the first quarter and early second quarter, which I think cost the Warriors Andrew Wiggins had a great game, 22 points, really efficient, 3 of 4 from 3-point range. Misses 2 free throws with 90 seconds left. He gets fouled by AD across the arm. Lakers review it, don't know why. And I don't know how much confidence you guys had. I had no confidence. I actually, when he went to the charity stripe, I thought, geez, if you can just make one here and tie the game, that'd be nice. If you can just make one and tie the game. And in the end, one might have been enough. Like the Warriors might have ended up winning. But unfortunately, he misses both. And that's the issue, I suppose, with Wiggs is there's with his free throw shooting. Even with some of his play down the stretch, I mean, how much faith do you actually have in this guy to make the big plays in the clutch moments? And I suppose that's the issue. He had 22 points, but when was his last bucket? Did he score in the fourth quarter? If he did, it was kind of early in the fourth quarter. He didn't make really any buckets down the stretch. You correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he did. I don't think he scored at all in overtime. And so he kind of went missing a little bit, unfortunately. As good of a game as he did have up until that point, a little bit disappointing there as well. His and JK's lack of aggression, I suppose, in the last 4 minutes of regulation and then in overtime. JK had a couple of plays where he was trying to be aggressive. He had that huge putback dunk. I'm not sure what point that came. Was that in overtime? I think that was in overtime. He had the drive on LeBron where he was fouled and went 1 of 2 from the free throw line. So he had 22 points as well. I think 9 rebounds, 9 of 18 shooting. So another really good JK game. 6th consecutive 20-plus point game. But I think looking back at that, when you look at the Warriors' offense in the last 4 minutes, you would hope that they could try and get more going downhill to the basket. And that's what Wiggs and JK provide you. And they didn't in that moment. Again, the Warriors got 2 jump shot heavy, got 2 Steph reliant in the last 4 minutes. And in overtime, if we're being honest, just way too Steph reliant. And that's what happens. I mean, the Lakers were LeBron reliant as well. They were AD reliant. Okay. But in that scenario, the Warriors need a second or third guy to go to. And I think that was a moment where JK or Wiggs could have stood up. And as I said, tried to get something going to the basket. When otherwise they were too jump shot heavy. One of the most controversial ones that I've seen on Twitter was the Pods 3 with 50 seconds left in double overtime. The Warriors are up 2 at that point, 141-139. Huge turnaround. So the Warriors kind of have a fast break. They get a stop. There's less than a minute left. They have a fast break opportunity. Drake hits Pods on the wing. And as soon as he put it up, I was like, you don't need to be taking that. And he misses it. And D'Angelo Russell goes down the other end, hits a 3, puts the Lakers back in front. And so that's a big talking point after the game is, should Pods have taken that shot? I think the general consensus is no. I think in that scenario, you try and manage the clock. But I also do understand the argument of, hey, he's like a nearly 40% 3-point shooter. There's you're only up 2 with 50 seconds to go. You still need offense in that scenario. And that might have been the best look you were going to get for the entire possession. That was a wide open wing 3 from a 40% 3-point shooter. That's a good shot. It just is. It's a good shot. It's also Pods. And what I mean by that is he's pretty fearless. And I think, I don't know, you'd have to ask him. But I wouldn't be surprised if he got asked about it and he said, you know what, I'd take it again. And I've trusted that my teammates will want me to take it again because I was wide open. I'm a 40% 3-point shooter. And so you've got to have some faith in yourself. And what Pods has been able to do this season has shown the confidence that he has in himself. And that was another demonstration of, another example of it right there. And yes, it might frustrate fans. Yes, you could easily look at it and say he shouldn't be taking that shot. But sometimes you live and die by a player's self-confidence. And I'd much rather him try and make the big plays than shy away from it, because I just spoke about JK and Wiggs, their lack of aggression, especially Wiggs in that fourth quarter and overtime, and completely disappearing kind of thing. Well, at least, Pods is a talking point after the game because he was willing to take the big shot, and unfortunately he missed it. If he'd made it, we would have been singing his praises, and the Warriors would have won that game. Again, good look, wide open wing three in transition. You take that shot every single time, except for maybe late in the last minute of the game. And so I don't really care either way. If you want to argue that he shouldn't have taken that shot, I'm with you. If you want to argue that was a wide open look for a confident young rookie, that's what he does, then that's fine too. And I don't really have a huge opinion on it either way. Last one on that final possession, JK. So JK had the comment with Bleacher Report's Chris Haynes on an interview he did on Friday, speaking about he's still nervous about, I suppose, making mistakes and being pulled off the floor, which I think is a genuine concern. I don't think that you want to be hearing that if you're a Warrior fan. I think that JK, he's probably emerged into maybe Golden State's third best player. And so I think if you're a player of that stature within the team, if you're the third best player on the team, you shouldn't be necessarily nervous about making mistakes and potentially that impacting your playing time. However, he's right in saying that he's a young player and he still makes mistakes, and that was glaring on that final possession. Not really sure what he was doing. So Pods is on LeBron. LeBron kind of blows by him. Not much resistance there. JK just should have come across. Left Taurean Prince wide open and got in front of LeBron, made it difficult, perhaps even drawn a charge, whatever. And if LeBron kicks it to Taurean Prince and Taurean Prince makes a three to win the game, so be it. Honestly, so be it. And instead, unfortunately, kind of tries to swipe down on him. It was a really poor defensive effort. Doris Burke was highly critical of it at the time, and rightly so. It was a poor defensive effort. And I think if he would relive that moment again, he would say, yep, I'm coming across, I'm doubling LeBron, and I'm leaving Taurean Prince wide open and living with that. If Taurean Prince wants to make the bucket, he can. So, disappointing final play there for the Warriors and for Jonathan Kuminga in particular, which ended, again, a really, really good game from him. I mean, his first 3 quarters especially were fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So after all that, some of the negatives, the mistakes, I suppose, that the Warriors had in that game. Some of the positives, the one I really want to focus on is Draymond. I mean, that was a classic Draymond game. 8 points. His 3-ball wasn't going like it has this season. 0-4 from deep, whatever. But aside from that, 8 points, 14 rebounds, 11 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. Just some high-level defense on Anthony Davis. And the Warriors were plus 31 in his 46 minutes. How they lost that game is quite remarkable. They were minus 32 in his 12 minutes off the floor. That's one of the more astonishing stats you'll see this season. And individual plus minus in any single game can often be misleading. I understand that. Some people take more into it than others. But that surely proved his value to this team. And it's almost more frustrating seeing how well he played yesterday, how well he's played since coming back from suspension. It almost makes it more frustrating the fact that he was out suspended, because you just wonder, the Warriors now 19-24 in the season, you wonder where they could have been, especially in some of these close games, without Draymond, had they had him. And the fact that his absence was self-inflicted almost makes it more frustrating. But at the same time, you've got to give him credit for how he's playing. He's now a plus 66 in 4 games since return. And the Warriors are 1-3 in that period. Plus 66 and the Warriors are 1-3. That's remarkable. It truly is remarkable, that statistic, along with the individual plus minus in that game against the Lakers, plus 31. Just wild. Into that and into the Draymond piece of the starting 5, which got changed up again yesterday. So we spoke about last episode, the Warriors' best lineup is undoubtedly Steph, Clay, Wiggs, JK, Dre. And I pondered whether or not that would become the starting lineup. And I actually thought it wouldn't. I thought that Draymond would come back, but JK might continue to come off the bench. But when we got the news yesterday that Steve was starting that lineup, I think most fans were very happy with that. It shows an urgency. It shows an urgency that, okay, let's just put our best five out there to begin with. Let's hope to begin the game well. And away we go. I think that's really important for where the Warriors are at this point of the season. So I think most fans are pretty happy with that decision. There were still some question marks with the rotation. I think, as I said before, you've got to have one of Steph or Draymond out there at all times. When they were both on the bench in that first half, disaster, absolute disaster. I go back to that lineup: Joseph, Pods, Clay, Saric, Looney. Not enough offense, not enough defense. And Draymond brings you both with the offensive facilitating, 11 assists yesterday, and of course the defense that he provides as well. So one or two of him have got to be on the floor at all times. Another interesting point yesterday, late in the game, in the fourth quarter, was TJD over Loon. So really when Dre's the center and you're also playing Saric as well, you can probably only have one of those two playing, like TJD or Loon. And it might just have to be TJD now. And Loon might have to be getting some DMPs here pretty soon, I would have thought. He provided a lot more in his brief minutes than Loon did. Much more of an offensive threat. Obviously, much more of a defensive threat, really, with his shot blocking ability. I think he's just gone past Loon. And I think, sorry. And I think, fans have been clamoring for him to be playing more. Some of the DMPs or lack of minutes that he's been getting over recent times has really come from nothing. Like, there was no reason for him to start deserving some DMPs. Steve would obviously have his reasons, but I think it's been generally disappointing, the lack of playing time that he's been getting over the last few weeks. And I think he needs to start playing more, and I think he will, because that brief stretch that he had in a few minutes early in the fourth quarter were pretty good. The Corey Joseph minutes, so he continues to play like fairly significantly. I'm trying to work out a way, like with Moody, GP2, CP3 still out, I'm trying to work out a way that you can not play Corey Joseph, essentially. And if you're saying, well, I don't want to play Corey Joseph and I only want to play one of TJD or Loon, then essentially you're saying, well, I'm going 8 deep in the rotation, which is not really what you want to do in late January, early February. Still just over halfway through the season. You don't want to be going to an 8-man rotation. However, maybe leading up to the All-Star break, maybe that's what you have to do. And I've just been contemplating that since the game finished yesterday. Maybe you just decide, I'm going with 8 guys. While Moody, GP2, CP3 are out, I'm just going with 8 guys. And it's a starting 5, and it's Pods, and it's Dario, and it's one of TJD or Loon. I think you need to have 2 of Steph, Dre, and Pods out there at all times if you can. If you do, then I think that negates the need for Corey Joseph. And I think, as I said, going forward, you're probably going to have a situation where one of Steph or Dre are on the floor at all times. And if that's the case, well, as long as you match them with Pods as well, then I don't think there's a need for Corey Joseph. You've also got to be mindful that you don't want to split up Steph and Dre too much, because their chemistry together is so valuable. Like, you still need those 2 guys playing together as much as possible. But it's an interesting point, just trying to work out, is there a way where you can eliminate the Corey Joseph minutes while also only playing one of Loon or TJD, while also, like, the Dario minutes at 5 just cannot happen. They just flat out cannot happen. Now, at a stretch, you could have Draymond and Dario out there, I guess, because then you can make the argument, well, Draymond's actually the 5 in this scenario. Maybe you can do that. But otherwise, I do not want to see Dario Saric at the 5 ever again. It's really ugly defensively. It has been all season. So, obviously got the 76ers coming up here. What is it, Tuesday night? I just wonder whether or not you could just go eight deep, and just try and, like, the urgency is there with the starting lineup with Steph and Clay and Wiggs and JK and Draymond. That's your best lineup. He's obviously gonna go to it now. I think this is the lineup starting lineup you'll probably see for a while. Is it sustainable? Is it sustainable over the course of the rest of the season? Maybe. It puts a lot of wear and tear on Draymond, but my point is that he's missed 21 games through suspension. He kind of owes the team to battle through, I think, and play as a small ball five more predominantly than he has in the past. So I think there's that. Does one of these guys get moved before the deadline and that'll shift the starting lineup again? I think Wiggs reminded us yesterday of why it's going to be hard to get rid of him. Because when he's playing like he did in the first 3 quarters yesterday, he's like a perfect fit for this team. He's still a good player when he's playing like that. And the return you're going to get for him now is, like, I mean, most of these reports that we see is really teams viewing him as a negative asset value-wise in terms of his contract. And so the Warriors are not going to get anything near what they want from Andrew Wiggins in terms of a trade in comparison to what they got yesterday from the man himself. They're just not going to get that. Like, I saw ESPN's Bobby Marks propose a trade of Wiggins and Joseph for Alec Burks and Monte Morris. Are we kidding? Are we kidding right now? Alec Burks and Monte Morris. No, thank you. Now, I understand why he's proposed that trade, and I understand why the Warriors may actually consider it, as bad as that sounds. Because at this point, they're 19-24. If they think the season's done and dusted, maybe you just get off Wiggins' contract for 2 expirings. And that's what it is. Maybe that's what happens. But I still think you see the way he played yesterday, 22 points, efficient, still your primary point of attack defender. You see that, and I think you got a tough time getting rid of him because you're not going to get anywhere near back the production that he provided yesterday. You're just not. I actually like when Draymond's in the second unit, I actually like the pace that they play with. And I do wonder, like, I feel like I've backflipped on multiple occasions on whether or not, like, should it be CP3 or Wiggins that the Warriors are trying to trade? And it sounds like it's Wiggins. But again, I go back to the point I just made. And also the fact that the pace that they play with in the non-Steph minutes when Dre's out there, I think is really good. And I think it's effective. And I just think CP3 might upset the apple cart there. And so again, I wonder, Chris Paul, maybe Moses Moody, a couple of first-round picks, what can it get you? And I think that's actually going to get more than... Like, Chris Paul should get more for you in a trade than Andrew Wiggins should, by the sounds of it at this point, because he's can be an expiring contract. As anyone that wants to trade for Wiggs has to take the 3 years remaining in his contract. So I think there's a blueprint here of how the Warriors want to play, and that's the best thing over these last 2 games. Is that you can see the vision. You can see why a Steph, Clay, Wiggins, JK, Draymond lineup, you can see why that'll work. Now, yep, there's still no traditional center there. It's probably, you don't want to go into next season with that as your starting lineup. You absolutely don't. You don't want to go into a full season. But for the rest of the season, you can see the vision of what they're trying to do. And you can see that that's clearly the best lineup, which is far more than what we've been able to say for the majority of the first half of the season. So that's good. And I'm not sure necessarily if the blueprint should include Chris Paul. Because, as I said, I think he might upset the pace that Draymond and the pods want to play with in the second unit. Now, yes, there's times where you want Chris Paul to be able to calm things down, to be able to methodically run the offense. But I think the Warriors are better when they're playing quick. The Warriors are better when they're trying to get out in transition, which they just haven't done this season. It's been a huge negative for them. And so that's still the move to me, I think, is Paul rather than Wiggins, a couple of first rounders. And if you have to throw Moody in there to get something reasonable in return, then so be it. So be it. Like, would you do that for... I don't know who the piece is. Like, is it Kuzma? Because you don't want a player that also upsets what the starting lineup is currently doing, which has been good over the last few games. But I don't know. Mark Stein said again yesterday before the game that like the Warriors are still most open to trading Wiggins. It'd just be interesting to see what the starting lineup is if they trade him and they don't get a similar like wing type back. But anyway, we'll finish up there because the NFL has just started, I think. What is it? The Chiefs and the Ravens, I think, first game. I'm going to call myself an honorary 49ers fan. And so I hope people maybe can listen to this before the 49ers game starts in a couple of hours here. I am not an NFL fan at all. I don't know anything about the teams or the players. I know Brock Purdy is the quarterback because I see his name on Twitter on the timeline repeatedly. Aside from that, I don't really know too much. However, I know enough about the rules of NFL, and the same with MLB. I know enough about the rules to understand what's going on, to get a reasonable indication of what each team's trying to do. And I just love sport, man. I just love sport. So when it comes to this point of the season where you're trying to get into the Super Bowl, I am actually looking forward. For the last couple of days, I've been really looking forward to sitting down and watching these couple of games, and especially the 49ers. And, of course, the Chiefs, you can't get away from Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. It's just in your face 24/7. So I'm going to go. I'm going to edit this. I'm going to chuck the Chiefs-Ravens game on or whatever. Let's hope the 49ers can get a dub and get into the Super Bowl because the Warriors aren't producing too much for the city of San Francisco right now. So let's hope that the 49ers can. Other than that, guys, thank you very much for listening to this episode. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that would be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at POK252. That's POK252. On Twitter, you can follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. If you've got any comments you would like me to read out, any questions, topics you'd like me to answer in next episode, then please let me know and I can get onto it. Other than that, guys, again, let's hope for a 49ers win. And we'll see you on the next episode.